Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Bob Gardner. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here this wonderful Sunday. How are you?
I'm feeling absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're very blessed to have you here today. We spoke just before we hit the go button that you are a freedom specialist, and people are probably like, what the heck is that? But one thing is for certain, many of our business owners built their business just for that very reason, to reach some freedom financially, or maybe they retired. But sometimes they often get in this trap where now they're kind of feeling that they're owned by their business and stuck in this life that they can't seem to get out of, kind of like a hamster wheel of sorts. But that's not a fun place to be. But before we go to share all your wonderful tips, I'd love for you to just go back and share a little bit of your backstory with our audience.
Sure. Yeah. I was, I'm a business owner myself, so I know the struggle with regard to that. But I was stuck in an addictive pattern for a long time. So from the time I was a little kid, I had a lot of depressive moods that would come through. I got really suicidal at a certain point, and I was stuck with some addictive behaviors, whether that was with drugs or the use thereof, or with food, and then also with pornographic material and stuff, for about 18 years. And there wasn't a way for me to find a way out. I was taught by everything I read, everyone I told, that even though they wanted me to have hope, I was going to be kind of chained to this for the rest of my life. That, well, it's a fact of life now. You're an addict. You're always going to be an addict. Or depression, sorry, you've got it. We can manage it or cope with it. And there was a certain point where I was sitting in my office, and I had this vision of myself at 90 being basically miserable. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to do that. And so I was like, okay, well, what they're offering me is probably the best they know how to offer. And there's probably nothing wrong with it from their perspective, but they obviously don't know how to help somebody find real freedom. So it's my job to figure it out. And so then I went and used all of the stuff that I had learned and more stuff that I went searching and scouring the globe to figure out, to find a way to land at freedom. Freedom being a state of being, of well-being and ease on the inside, regardless of the outside circumstances. I can be overwhelmed by tons of things that I have to do for my clients. I can be working 12-hour days. If my state on the inside is one of freedom, then the 12-hour days don't feel like work. But if that state has changed, and now it's anxious, or it's overwhelmed, or it's burdened, or it's tight, or it's tense, or it's not malnourished, or something like that, then all of a sudden those same 12 hours are a totally different experience. And so it became a process of me learning first a skill, freedom as a skill, not a pill.
I love that.
An unconscious competence, like just something that my body does by instinct. It went from skill to instinct. Wow. And that's what I end up training people how to do.
Wow. That's amazing to me, because I think often what I hear from a lot of people, especially business owners, they think if they reach a certain level of financial income that I'll have that freedom. But I often hear from people who actually do really well. They get huge businesses, they're bringing in huge sums of money. They don't feel free. Now they feel stuck to it more than ever. One guy told me I had 50 or 100 employees, and now I'm like, I got to make sure we keep making that money so I can make sure to pay everyone, vendors, and blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't freedom. And that's not how he felt. He felt trapped. And so I think it's interesting that it's really you're managing your inner state and maybe your emotions and how you interact with what's going on the outside, but not let it control the inside.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really, really, it's simple, but it's everything that I did was body based. It was like, well, how can I work with the equipment that I always have with me to make this happen, so that I don't need to rely on, like I used to, food, or I needed to have relationships around, or somebody that loved me or was constantly doting on me, or I needed affirmations from somebody else, or drugs, or whatever else I had used. How do I rely only on what I was born with and make that produce it on its own? Now,
can I ask you, is it exercise based? Does exercise or just movement play a part in building this freedom?
Yeah, movement is a part of it. So basically the pillars of it are how you breathe, how you move, the way that you stand, your posture, but also kind of what you put inside of your body. It's not an a hardcore diet by any stretch of the imaginations or anything like that, because I'm a simple guy and I prefer simple things. But like how much you drink, that type of stuff. But also it's not just make sure you exercise, because people exercise inefficiently, and we do things that build more tension into the body. Yes, they squeeze some good endorphins out of the body, but now the body has to recover. Yeah. And a lot of the training that I was going through, I was, training with Russian special forces operatives and going into the woods and learning how to like deal with a knife coming at me. Because I'm like, well, if I can handle a knife, then I can handle a negative email from a client.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was really trying to make it a concrete thing that would help me do this. And that's what we do with our clientele at our retreats and stuff, is give them concrete body experiences that bypass the brain, so that the body discovers it doesn't have to be as tense. It doesn't have to react that way on its own without us having to like tell it to calm down.
Interesting.
So these are like, it's not just exercise, but you can exercise in a way that powers you up, so that at the end of the exercise, you're more open, more free, more clear, more energized. Or you can exercise in a way that makes you feel good, but then you're tired and drained.
And you probably overtaxed your body to the point where, there's that sweet spot. Yeah. And sometimes people go either too far or too little, but finding that sweet spot. Now, you hit on something I thought was very interesting, Bob, and that was, maybe doing challenging things so that your body will learn to be like, when it's an email, it won't get so threatened. Are you putting people like in extreme situations, like kind of like a boot camp of sorts, so that, life isn't that challenging? So it's like running from a tiger. You ran from the tiger, so this email is not going to, make your body go into overdrive.
Yeah, we do that in a controlled way. I mean, like there's a lot of laughter, a lot of joking. It's not a boot camp by any stretch. Everybody's they're screaming and yelling, but like we're taking them through, for instance, some intense breath. My job is to say, like, if we had a map on the board of everywhere your nervous system could be, from utterly still and you're by yourself alone and your thoughts are like, can I be by myself alone? Oh no. And also very intense breathing, very intense in terms of like physical pressure on the body or something. Like if we have someone like lay on you and you're just like, oh man, I feel stuck. Well, where else in your life do you feel stuck? Your brain pieces those together the same way. So if we train you how to be free inside of that, and then how to escape, then all of a sudden your body has produced another option, and given more than one option, it'll always choose the one that feels better. So we're not actually trying to untrain all the stuff that a person has learned. They're just masters at misery.
Oh my God.
We just want to like train them in the boot camp, or like the dojo of delight,
I like that. Dojo of delight. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, you know what this reminds me of, Bob? Many years ago, I was 2006. And I made a promise to myself I was going to tackle two of my greatest fears. One, intimate relationships, because I wanted to find a life partner, which I did. My beautiful husband now. I met him that year. And the other one was flying, because I love to travel, but I was so intensely, like the fear was so intense. I felt I would explode from the fear. That's how intense it was. And it was like, I talked to everyone. They're like, it's not a big deal. Everyone's on airplanes. They're not blowing up, falling out of the sky. But I had this fear that I would just utterly die in an airplane. It's just nuts. So I said, I'm going to conquer that. So I basically put myself in a 4-seater airplane, Cessna, and took myself on a Discover flight. And then later also kept doing some flight training. But what was interesting about that fear going through it is that I had nowhere to go. I had to deal with it. It was right there. I couldn't run from it. I couldn't open the door and jump out of the airplane. I'd die. But it was what I realized from going through that experience is that when I just stopped fighting against it, it dissipated. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Oh my gosh, look at that down there. Yeah. And I got down from the flight class going, sign me up. I love this. And it just gave me a sense of like, wow, it like opened a new world to me.
Yeah. A lot of what people do, like what I'm trying to do is help them discover that they're already good enough and discover that they're already strong enough. And that goes with, a lot of the people that I work with are people with deep levels of addiction, people who have been on chronic anxiety, panic attacks, depression, and or business owners that are overwhelmed and they're just, they've got everything in the world on their shoulders and whatnot. Yeah. People who are in chronic pain and they just feel like a victim to their circumstance, or a victim to a diagnosis, or a victim to whatever else is happening. And because they feel like that, they don't feel like they have an option but to just kind of cope with it, and life has gotten miserable. So when they can discover on the inside that like, holy cow, I have some control over this. And I didn't die. Oh, interesting.
I'm alive.
all of these other things, and they start to feel wonderful. Literally, it's just training them over the course of, like, the retreats we do over the course of 5 days, how to live kind of at play. And, the online material and stuff we do is just a longer process of that,
Boom. I love what you say there. Learn through play. I mean, that's what we did as kids. Everything was about play. I remember as kid, I would try to be the checkout person. I pretend to be the doctor, and we put on all these hats and try them out. And it wasn't weird or funky. What are you doing? Why are you trying to be a doctor? It's like, why not? And, but we lost that sense of play as we become adults. I don't know why. I mean, it's got played out of us like, oh, adults don't play like that. But
no, you can't play until you get your work done or your chores done, right? So that gets trained out of us.
Exactly.
But the chores never get done as an adult.
You're like, I'll put that aside. I want to put that.
Let's just use the playback in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm curious about. You mentioned something that you help people feel worthy. And I felt like that, especially in my 30s, I was trying to self-discover and whatever, this sense of unworthiness, or I'm not worthy. Why do so many adults go through that? Something like that.
So what I've seen over the years with, all these people that I've been able to look at, and inside my own life, it's not intentional. Some people had really rough childhoods, but most people, it's not a rough child or anything, but as a child, you're just involved in life, but you're getting kind of a constant message from somewhere on the outside, from teachers and parents and adults down the street, and who knows, that, like, you should do things a little bit different, or oh, that's not right, do it this way. So there's this corrective quality that parents have on and adults have on children. And over time, they learn to stop trusting their own instincts because mama knows best or daddy knows best. And they start to learn to look to other people for approval because that's what they've been trained to do. And then we have grades that measure us. And if you don't get a good grade, this, that, or the other, and then we have all of these trophies and awards. And then you have, as you get older, the goals are what? Business, what's your milestone in terms of how much revenue you bring in a month, or how many clients you've helped, or did you write that book, or, oh, that guy did this crazy cool adventure. Can I do something like that? And so it all becomes an external achievement-based things. When those achievements aren't happening, they do give some level of relief. But then what happens on the inside is this total emptiness when those aren't happening. And so we feel like I'm worth less because the body feels that way, just because we learn to agitate our bodies this way. So what has to happen, and part of the work that I do is very psychological, whereas I have to help a person see through their own story. It's almost like if you lost your keys, you're running around the house blaming everybody for taking your keys.
It's okay. In my case, it's around my neck usually because I have it.
Right, exactly. And you find it, and you're like, oh, never mind. It's instantaneous. When you see the reality, then it's an instantaneous relief of all the agitation that was there. And the same thing happens where I have to work with people to get them to see through all their stories about themselves, to see the reality of the beautiful being that they are when they see it, not when somebody tells it to them. Affirmations don't work that way. But when they actually see it, witness it, glimpse it with their own being, some part of them goes, oh, cool. And then they start dropping all of this need to measure up to other people's expectations.
It's true. We spend so much of it. This is a weird experience, but many years ago, I was on the subway platform waiting to go home in Manhattan, and there was this gorgeous gal. I mean, beautiful, drop dead gorgeous. And I remember thinking for a moment, gosh, I wish I was her. She's so beautiful. Look at, she's absolutely perfection in her body. But then another thought popped in my head, and I said, yeah, but I'd have to give up all the other amazing things that make me me if I were her. Because I don't know anything about her. I mean, she's amazing in her own right, but I liked a lot of the stuff about me, and you know what I mean? So I went through that kind of process. Like, I want to be her. And then the other thing that popped in my head is like, well, then I wouldn't be me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people don't realize that who they are is perfect from the beginning. It's just like a seed, a plant.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to chase perfection, but there's nothing wrong with a seed. It's perfect as a seed, and then it's perfect as a sprout, and then it's perfect with its little leafies on, and it's perfect as the trunk of a tree, and then it's perfect when it's finally giving fruit, and then it's perfect when there's no part of the process of the life of that tree that it isn't perfectly what it is.
Yeah.
But if it ran around trying to be like a rose bush instead, all it would do is die. Because it wouldn't be doing what a tree needs for its own sustenance, you know?
Yeah, I think we're the only beings on the planet that do that. Like oak trees, I never go, oh, what if I don't be an oak tree? It's like, no, they're just being an oak tree. We're the only ones that beat ourselves up. It's like, no, I got to be something else. And on the front, you said just a bit ago, I recall there was a friend of mine who had reached multi-million-dollar status in his business. He said, I just bought a beach house. He sat down that night and said, I fell apart because I felt so empty. And so I think it's what you were talking about before about the sense of worthiness. It didn't matter how much he got on the outside. He still needed to work on feeling secure and wanted or worthy inside before the outside, he could, I guess, enjoy the fruits of his labor.
Yeah. What's beautiful about that emptiness, though, is that it's actually a gift. When that emptiness arises, it's like some part of your body showing you that, like, this won't fill me up. And so it's this beautiful gift of it. It's almost like his system saying, we can keep chasing it if you want, but this is the emptiness that it creates. When, if you kind of like look inside, we're already full, there's no need
to go chase all these mansions, whatever. This is awesome. But I'd love you to share, what does it look like when someone joins you in one of your retreats? Share a little bit about all that and how,
So the retreats are 5 days long. What we do in advance is they get access to all this stuff that's available for them to learn to do at home, so that at the retreat we focus on the stuff that you just can't do at home because you need somebody else to, guide you through it. And so they're learning how to breathe. They're learning just simple things that can start to modulate how they feel, whether that's with pain or whether that's with anxiety or depression or addictions or OCD or bipolar, all the other stuff that we've worked with. And they start to learn little ways that they get to have control over their nervous system and start to train their nervous system to respond to life in a very different way. Then as they come in, we get them all together on a bus. We meet them on the bus and we drive them to the location. It's usually out here in Utah, up in the mountains, kind of nice, pristine, kind of nice area that we rent. And then we spend these days taking them through kind of physical processes to help them slowly over time kind of release from their body all of the conditioning that they've built up over their life. Because every thought you have, every emotion you've had, whatever, those are residual tension patterns and things firing in the body. And if you do them frequently, like a constant worry about a deadline, then your body learns to keep firing that set of muscles and that kind of chemistry. And then it becomes kind of a muscle memory. Your body has just learned the habit of being a little bit anxious. And so we got to bring those habits to the surface and then help their body kind of like hold up a mirror to their body with breath exercises or with movements or something else, where their body's like, oh, and then we show them other ways to respond so that their body now has options.
That's awesome. Is it too taxing for some people? Like, do you have to be in a certain amount of shape to show up? Oh, okay.
No, because the point of all of this is to arrive at an inner state of freedom, not to be an Olympic athlete. And so if just thinking, for instance, sometimes we'll use knives, right? And there's some people that are afraid of knives. And so just thinking about it is bringing up all this emotion. Perfect. That means we can work at that. Because if just thinking about flying, for instance, for you was the thing, then you and I could work with, all right, let's give your body a different option for thinking about flying. And then all of a sudden it relaxes and we go, okay, cool. Now think about flying again. And then you're like, wow, okay, I'm still a little tense, but I'm not as tense as I was before. That's interesting. And then we work again until your body stops with the habit of every time I think about flying, I'm going to freak out. Or every time I think about my wife, and she's frustrated and she rolls her eyes at me. And then all of a sudden, like, what am I going to do? So it doesn't matter if they can be like bust out. I can't bust out 300 push-ups. I'm not the most athletic person on the planet, but, and so it's not about physical prowess, but more about an inner state of freedom. And everything we're doing is about helping a person discover that they are all that's needed. And, physical shape is helpful in that, but it's not required.
So when they go through your process, is it, all right, the 5 days, is the process much longer for them to incorporate that freedom into their life? Like, how long have you seen that people can actually create a life of freedom? Is it like 6 months, a year, or does it depend on the person and how deep-seated some of their fears are? Or
so because some of the process we're doing are ramping up internal chemical factories, right? So we're teaching them how to produce painkillers on their own in their own body through vocalizations and some other kind of breathing practices. We're teaching them how to ramp up BDNF, which enhances neuroplasticity and how to like ramp up genetic markers for immunity and stuff just through movement and things like this. There is a residual effect after the retreats. Many people coast for a month or 2 or 3 where they just feel on top of the world. And if in that period of time, they take what we've learned and double down on it, then that just continues. Will they run into another thing that they didn't cover? Sure. Because I mean, we don't cover everything all at once. Yeah. And my own life history was like breakthrough, and then like, wow, I feel great. And then, oh, what's going on? And then another kind of like plateau, and then so on. So it's not been like a steady line for me, or just a like one and done. And I've had some clients come where it's like a one and done and their life is great, or at least that's how they refer to it to us. And I was like, I've been a little jealous of them because that's not how it happened to
me. Well, it's interesting. I had a nutritionist on twice. She's amazing, Andrea Beeman. And she said to me, because I had thyroid issues, and she said, listen, people want that we can just fix it with nutrition overnight. And it took you sometimes to get that dis-ease state many years, sometimes 20 years for you to get that process in your body. It's not going to be boom, one and done, and you're all better. It's going to take time for your body to heal and to be patient with it and love it and to give yourself time. And it's true. I think our society has become, like you said, it's not a pill you had mentioned, because I think we've gotten used to the idea, doctor, just give me the pill so it goes all away. And we kind of want that one and done thing, but often in life, in order to have that full potential of reaching your fullest potential or health or well-being, it takes time to reach it.
Yeah. What I'll say to people is like, we don't actually know. It could happen as a one and done thing. And it could also take time. And as long as you're enjoying yourself along the way, it doesn't really matter. So, because they're so fixed. If you're fixated on an end goal, then you're not able to enjoy what's happening. So everything that I'm trying to get to people is like, your life is already happening. We can't change the fact that this is happening. You might as well enjoy it. And so I'm here with my dad right now. He has stage 4 metastatic melanoma. I came up last week because he had been in the emergency room, bloating, all kinds of other stuff. And so I came up and I'm doing the same stuff I do with other people on a slightly gentler scale, but like really it's mostly the same stuff. And just this morning, he's like, what am I going to do between now and 12:30? And I was like, well, we're going to turn your pain into pleasure. And so we did some movements and we did some other things. And he was just in this blissed out state for like 2.5 hours. Awesome. Just as beautiful. He fell asleep, just as glorious kind of, all we did was move him around. All we did was breathe a little bit. All we did was a few little other things to kind of ramp up his chemical factories on the inside. His pain isn't gone. It may never go. Like his cancer may never go. We don't know. But he got to enjoy 2.5 hours of just without the pain because it disappeared. So I say, look, that's all we're trying to do is make a puddle here, a puddle there. And then we expand them into ponds. Then we make them lakes. We start connecting them, see if we can get some rivers between them. Then we start hopefully making them some oceans in here. And if we can start to expand it to where every movement, every breath is pleasurable, even if I have a disease, even if the situation doesn't go away, I got to enjoy it.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting about this, Bob? I recall, I used to do obligatorily for years. Oh, I have to go to the gym. I do my 50 minutes, get out, get in. And it's this, I'm going to do it because I have to. And I think often we do that in our lives instead of realizing I get to do this. How blessed am I? And as you were saying, enjoy the journey. And the past 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago, I hired a trainer and I began to enjoy the journey of doing movement. And again, because as a kid, I did dance. And then you realize, wow, this can be pleasurable. It can be joyful instead of, oh, I got to go do this. I got to go take the kids to do this, or I got to go work out, instead of saying, I get to go do this.
Yeah, exactly. Just infuse joy inside it. It's happening already, even death. Yeah. If it's happening, you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so that's been a guiding light for me for a long time. Like whether I can be free as a state of being if if I'm drinking from the well of my being in everything that's happening, even if all hell's breaking loose on the outside. And I have 6 children, and teenagers, and there's always a drama, there's always something going on, lots of driving around and lots of there's not a lot of me time. And here it's been 15-hour days, with my dad. And there's this beautiful thing happening inside me all the time, just because it's not dependent on the outside situation. Not all the time. I'm not 100% like some sort of enlightened, glowing being that's unattainable or anything. There's moments where I get frustrated, and then I go, oh, that's cute. I'm frustrated right now. And then I get to go enjoy it again,
Yeah. Well, I love that, because it seems to me also what you're saying is this is a choice. I mean, it's a deliberate process that you have to choose, and we'll fall off the wagon, as you said, get frustrated at moments, but realize that we have the option to go back to a liberty mindset and not be entrapped in stress or turmoil or whatever. We could go on a lot longer. I know we could, but I don't want everyone to leave without finding out how they can find out more about you, become, join one of your special events and all of that, and get a copy of your book. How can they do that?
Yeah. So I wrote a book kind of laying out what's on the underpinnings of all this stuff. There's a few practices in there. Warning, they're in the middle of the story. So all the details are there, but I didn't want you to get bogged down in a how-to list and miss the hope that the book is producing. So I'm writing a companion volume with all the little details and stuff. Those are in there. You can get that at builtforfreedom.org. So that's the title of the book, Built for Freedom. And if you're curious about other online programs, basic ones from home, or coming to one of our retreats, you can go to thefreedomspecialist.com. We have a women's retreat actually coming up at the beginning of August, and one for anybody in the beginning of October.
Awesome. And you're also the host of the podcast Alive and Free, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And where can they find that?
That should be everywhere, like Alive and Free with Bob Gardner. We just uploaded it, and it goes to Apple and Google and Spotify and everywhere else.
The women's retreat, is that more intense? Like, does it allow women to go more into, if they're maybe, say, uncomfortable with going in certain areas, dealing with issues, does it allow them to go more freely without being with other men and other people? Is that why you created just a women's retreat?
Yeah, we do. We've done men only and women's only. The women's retreat in particular, it's probably, and for many of them, it's like the first time in their life that they have a guy. There's a lot of women's retreats run by women. But to have a guy and a group of guys, we do have women on the team as well, but have a group of guys there and have them have an experience with guys who are guiding them out of their trauma, out of their pain, out of their misery, is giving their nervous system on every possible level different information about their relationship to men in general. And so unspoken healing starts to happen around their fears and trust of men and things like that starts to happen as well. So I started running them because I'd seen all these women that have been to all these retreats, and they come out and they're survivors. But I look at them and I go, you're way more than just a survivor. Like, you're a human being, and you need to be freed of all that story, including the story that you're in danger from a guy. So they're learning how to handle, a mass of a guy there in front of them, how to deal with, they actually tend to be more courageous than the men. They see the body work that we're doing, and they're like, that, I know I need that. And the guys are like, well, I don't know if I need that. It's very interesting to see how hungry they are to have some sort of physical something that they can get their hands on and finally let go of pain and suffering. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Body image issues and addiction and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I love that, because, I had this thing that popped in my head many years ago, because I used to play in this kind of victim mindset for many years. And I came to this idea that I can't both be a victor or a victim. I have to choose one. And, I love the fact that you don't have to be a survivor. You're much more than that. It's like, leave that alone. You're the victor in this, not the victim. I love that. Well, Bob, I just have to thank you again for coming to Savvy Broadcasting today and sharing your wisdom. Everyone, please go to thefreedomspecialist.com. Find out how you can totally live a truly transformational and freedom-like life, free from stress and all of that. Bob, thank you so much for coming to Savvy Broadcasting.
It was an honor. Hope everybody got something out of it.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.